You need to run experiments, and it doesn't matter with what. You just want people to run experiments because that will start the wheel spinning.
What is going on, certified homies? Welcome to another. Oh, wow, that was terrible. Welcome to another episode of Hippie. You have Shiva, and I had to figure out the pronunciation. I'm gonna nail this. Are you ready? Welcome to this episode, Jonas Elvis.
Almost perfect, Shiva.
Damn.
Almost. Damn. The last time sounded like Elvis, but.
Okay, I said that specifically because your nickname is Elvis because you're a rock star. So Jonas Elvis. How do you like that nickname? Do you feel like you're a rock star in the space?
I like to think that I'm close to it. Not at the top like Lucas and Ronnie, but.
I love it. Well, see, they're like the OGs. You're coming in as like the challenger to the space, okay? So maybe not Elvis. Actually, Elvis was... Fuck it, we're gonna stick with this. You're Elvis. You're a fucking rock star, all right? And also, you're a co-founder of AB Smartly, which is an A/B testing platform. The reason why I wanted to have you on, first of all, I picked you specifically because I wanted to make sure I found someone who was selling a platform, but would not try and sales pitch me or my audience the whole time. So that's why I picked you specifically. So you're on alert, Jonas. You cannot be doing the sales pitch thing, but I'll ask you questions if you need to talk about things. It's totally fine. But the reason I wanted to have you on specifically is A/B testing tools. I guess, let me just start with this question. Why are you charging me thousands of dollars to just randomize users? I don't understand. Like, why? This is such an easy thing to build a testing tool. Why am I giving you thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, to just randomize traffic? Am I missing something?
Well, it's not about the randomization, right? You know that.
Okay, so tell me what I'm missing.
You know that an A/B testing tool is a lot more than that, right? It's actually not about the dashboards and the tool itself. It's about building trust, right? It's actually a trust platform, right? You need to build trust on the randomization. You need to build trust on the metrics, on the statistics, on the decision making. If you lose trust, like, people will not run experiments, right? So trust is actually the product that you are building there.
That's really interesting. I was not even thinking anything remotely like that. Of course, that makes sense, but it is a trust platform. You're buying something to help you make trustworthy decisions. And at the crux of this platform, I think every platform should have an inherent amount of trust in it, because if you're buying something with tens of thousands of dollars and it doesn't do what you want it to do, that's bad. But especially with decision making, like analytics has to have the highest upper echelon of trust. This is the same thing. If you don't trust the tool to do what you expect it to do, that's really fucking bad.
Exactly. And like, anyone can build a simple A/B testing tool, right? If you just do randomization, like most companies think that, hey, we want to build it in-house, right? But I think that in the long run, there's a lot of hidden costs in building a tool. Like, it's not just the initial build that you need to have, also the years of maintenance, like the statistical edge cases, keeping up with best practices, right, to the guardrails. It's a lot more than just randomization and metrics, right? And then if you start running experiments at scale, then on top of that, you need to have meta-analysis across all the experiments. Like, you need to have visibility across the experimentation program and not simple experiments, right? Single experiments. You need to know about, are we increasing velocity? Are we making better decisions over time? Are we testing the right stuff? Like, there's a bunch of stuff that you need to have on top that is not based on single experimentation. It's the whole culture around it and the program around it as well, right? You want to increase the usage across the teams and the organization, and increase everything, the velocity, the speed of shipping experiments from idea to production.
You brought up something that was pretty interesting. The whole idea around a longer term program. It's not simply just come in and run individual tests. I guess the hope is that when you buy a platform like this, you're investing a lot of money. Same thing with analytics, by the way. And I think there's a lot of parallels between like analytics and A/B testing tools. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're very integrated, or I guess they should be integrated. But I digress. When you're spending this much money, it should be a foundational thing where you're really setting a foundation that you set it once, and then you let's say you have a 7-year program. You can look at everything historical. But I am curious, like how much has the testing landscape for you in terms of the stuff that you're building, has it changed in a significant, in like the amount of years that you've been building a product, that maybe the way that tests were analyzed or run or set up maybe 7 years ago is different now? Or is it just the technology to implement tests?
I think I have two answers for that. I think it's yes and no. No, in the sense that the kind of experimentation that I was doing 10 years ago is very different from the kind of experimentation that most companies were doing 10 years ago. Right? Because at Booking, we were at the edge of experimentation, right? We were running experiments in a way that nobody was running outside of Booking, except maybe Microsoft and Google.
To be fair, I mean, that's years ago. To be fair, even now, I don't think there's a lot of people. There might be like 7 people who have kind of caught up to the realm that you guys
but it's
were at 10
now.
years ago.
Yeah, it's changing a lot. So I think that experimentation has a culture across the board, like around the board, the experimentation around the board, so not on specific companies, but in the horizon, right? It's across everything, has evolved a lot since 10 years ago to now, right? Experimentation, I think most companies that were exposed to it were exposed to Optimizer in the beginning, maybe Google Website Optimizer, some other tools came after, like VWO and that kind of stuff, which were tools more focused on running experiments, client sides, doing DOM changes, right? So that was a kind of experimentation that most people started with, which is very different from how we started in 2005 at Booking, right? Because there were no tools around it. So we started running experiments in the backend, in not only visual stuff, but also on the algorithms that we're using, which is what most companies started doing a few years ago, right? And some are starting now, right? So it's so when you ask if experimentation is very different now, I think that if you compare with the tooling that existed and that most companies were exposed to it in the beginning, yes, it has evolved a lot. If you compare it with how experimentation was being done in like top tech companies, the change, it's still evolved a lot, right? But the change is not as drastic as you can see across the board.
I think you're saying mostly it's just like the maturity of experimentation has evolved and grown up. So maybe the average maturity was, let's say, 1 out of 5 10 years ago, the average. And Booking pulled it up, but it was still on average 1 out of 5, right? Now it's, let's say, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5. It's getting more improved. And as experimentation evolves and more people adapt and realize they are getting into it. So whereas maybe a few people were doing algorithm test changes, now more people have realized the value of experimentation, or doing more complex tests like algorithms beyond, let's just say beyond button color testing, as Erin loves to run her button color tests.
Exactly. And now it will change again. Like with AI, you'll start seeing AI in all the steps, right? In ideation, in better decision making, in guardrails, in alerts. You'll see AI everywhere, right? It's and not only in experimentation. That's coming for everything. I would say.
What was the hardest thing when you were building out AB Smartly? What was the hardest thing you had to solve for? You could say for AB Smartly, or you could even say with Booking.com. I'm just curious, like, what was the hardest thing you had to solve for?
I'll pick Booking because there I was working for a much more mature audience, and you said it was actually trust, right?
So it's not the platform itself. Oh, are you saying the trust in the platform?
Exactly, and there were a few occasions where we lost trust in the platform, and that was terrible. Like that was really, really hard, because then when you need to gain trust again, you need to prove it. You need to make a huge effort to bring that trust back, right? So when we had like small bugs like, I don't recall once we had a problem in the tool that invalidated like 3 months of data or something. That was a real issue. Like, so trust is the most important thing. If you lose trust, it will take forever to get it back, right? It's so you need to be sure that you have guardrails, that you know that everything is to be sure that everything is trustable. You need to have instrumentation across everything, right, across the board.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I mean, that's the same thing with analytics too, right? Like people, as it is getting in buy-in and investment into analytics or into experimentation, in some, I'd say honestly, in many cases, it's generally an uphill battle. You'll have people who are bought in and they're 100%, but then everyone else surrounding it, it's an uphill battle. And that doesn't mean it's not achievable, but it is hard, especially in early or low stage maturity companies in terms of experimentation, to like get them bought into data and then to take the next level beyond data into actually testing stuff. So as it is, it's an uphill battle where they're fighting you every step of the way. If you give them one fucking reason to be like, oh, that data broke that one time at 3 a.m. Oh, I'm just never gonna trust testing again. Like they're looking for reasons to not trust it, and don't you dare give them a reason. So that was the issue dealt at Booking, where it was like a data outage or a data discrepancy or something that caused people to basically be like, oh, I guess we're just never gonna trust this again. Or like, how did you build that trust back up again?
Well, we had to measure stuff and prove that things were not happening again. But indeed, we saw a decrease in experiments after we had those trust issues, right? So people start running less experiments. So you need to show them that hey, this is fixed. This is the proof. Everything is working now. We recovered this data. We did this and that, so that it doesn't happen again. So you need to start building the velocity again, right? So, and that is costly for the company, right? So it's one of the most important things is that, and that's maybe why I believe that most vendors delayed adding SRM checks across the platforms, right? Things that we were doing at Booking like 20 years ago, I think that they never actually did it by default. You need to go there and turn it on, right? I think they were afraid of losing trust because of the amount of SRMs that people would start seeing when they don't know how to experiment correctly, right? So they were afraid that people would, and this is the lack of culture that is seen on those vendors at the time, right? They didn't have that culture of data-drivenness, creating trust, and right. So they were afraid of that, giving that visibility to the users about the trust that they might lose if they give that visibility, right? So, and that was there at Booking since the beginning, right? We didn't have those issues with, hey, if something is broken, people need to know that it's broken, right? So you cannot hide it. And actually you should have those guardrails to let them know that, hey, your experiment is broken and that's an issue, right? That's a much bigger issue than letting them know that it's broken, right?
Well, editor Shiva's going to go in and bleep the name that you cited, just to be clear. Speaking of editor Shiva, hey, it's editor Shiva. Just a couple quick things. Sorry for kind of slowing down a little bit on the, let's say, velocity of episode release. It's been crazy busy in Shiva land over here, but trying to get back on the horse here. I have some really cool, diverse speaking voices that I'm really excited to promote and have on the podcast soon. Stay tuned for that. I'm doing a merch release very, very, very soon. So if you're interested, please drop me a DM so I can make sure I get your size there. And then do all the free things. Like this episode, subscribe. Make sure you go to fromatob.beehive, beehiiv.com to subscribe. All right, let's get back to the show. That's an interesting call out, right? The people will just run less tests if they don't trust the platform. And that's a logical feeling, right? If they feel like they can't trust something, they do less of it. You talk about SRM. SRM was honestly something that I didn't realize was an issue until Lucas talked a lot about that. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal until, honestly, a couple years in my career. And I don't think that's necessarily bad because at least you're running a test. If it's not the most trustworthy, but you keep on progressing through the maturity ranks where you start with 1, you can't just start off at level 5 maturity, right? You have to progress, and you're not going to be perfect in stage 1. It'll be better in stage 2 and better in stage 3, whatever. How many people actually know SRM is an issue? Because I know that I'm curious if you have a POV that's more directed towards more mature people who you can say SRM and everyone knows what it is and knows how bad it is. But I've talked to other people, and these are marketers who have never run an A/B test, and there's other people who are maybe in my adjacent field. They don't know what SRM is. They're like, it's just a percent, just divide the percents, right? They don't realize that SRM actually created an issue with the randomization, which affects the trust in the platform. So you're saying trust in the platform is needed. But how many people know the factors that go into a trustworthy experiment that maybe there's some blind spots that they didn't know? Anonymous testing tool doesn't have an SRM checker, right? If people don't know that SRM's an issue, then that doesn't decrease the trust because they don't know it's an issue. They just at the end of the day, a lot of people are just looking for a green number go up. You tell me if it's trustworthy. If not, I'll just rerun the test. You know what I mean? Like, how much is that important in trust? Things like that.
I may be a bit biased because my audience is more mature usually than the average. So most people that I talk with, they already know what SRM is. But what you are saying is a big issue, right? You just said that you learned about it 2 years ago, and that is because most
Sorry, no. To be clear, I learned it 2 years into my career, not 2 years ago.
Still that, right? It's because most vendors didn't talk about it, right? Didn't make it available, didn't make it transparent. Maybe because of being afraid of the repercussions of seeing bad experiments in their tooling. But I would say that people are more aware of it now, right? So I think that even if you start running experiments now and you don't know about it because your tool doesn't use it, as the maturity increases over time, you learn about it, and that trust issue will come out, right? You'll want to turn it on if it's possible to turn it on, or doing it yourself. And if you start seeing the issues, then you'll start having those maybe not in the beginning, but in the beginning you are learning about everything, right? So I think that's very soon in your maturity growth ramp, right? You'll find that that's a thing that you should look at, and you'll figure out that it's an issue, right? And you'll find out that issue in your experiments, and then the trust will be there. Like the trust issues will be there.
Yeah, this is interesting because I don't think there's an objectively right answer to this, but I want to push you a little bit on the trustworthy piece, because I think, is an experiment trustworthy, yes or no, is a bit of a subjective take. There's some objective things that go into it, but at the end of the day, it's a subjective view on what you determine to be trustworthy or not. And it's on who's making the decision to say this is trustworthy or not. So for example, you could say like, do we say 95% stat sig, or do we say 80, or do we say 20? And obviously most of us, I would hope, would say, yeah, 20% is not a trustworthy experiment. But if you had to say like, well, what's the threshold? Is it, if you had an 89% stat sig versus 90, or 89% probability to beat control versus 90, does that make one trustworthy if it's 90% and untrustworthy at 89? Debatable. I think that's subjective. But I say all these things to say, some of these tools, if you have all of these checks in place to say, this is a trustworthy experiment, how much of that should be at the control of the person making the decision to say, this SR, like, for example, I think you and I would very much agree that like SRM is an issue that we have to address. And if a test has SRM, we shouldn't trust the test, rerun it, fix the problem, both. Who's to say Jonas, fuck. I'm so used to saying Jonas because I was like, I'm preparing for that. I practiced it 50 times. Sorry.
It's fine. Jonas, it's okay.
Who's to say that you making the testing tool, you're the one to determine trust, versus should the trust of the experiment be in some part on the onus of the user running? Does that question make sense? Yeah,
it does. And it makes a lot of sense because there's so much to say that an experiment is trustworthy, right? Because there's so many variables there. Like, is the data good, right? The quality of the data.
What is good data? Like, what is the standard for good data?
Exactly, and that is not something that you can measure in a tool. right? You have no idea if the data is good, right? You need to know if you are losing data. You need to know what is this data about, right? Did they choose the right metric for this experiment? Is this actually the right metric for the change that is being done? There's a lot that is there that the tool cannot tell you, right? So you need to make those conscious decisions as the user of the tool as well. What the tool can do is to give you alerts about things that might be wrong, right? If the tool noticed that some events were triggered but not collected, or you are losing events somehow, like SRM is a way to detect that, right? That if you lose more events in one of the variants, then you'll have a SRM alert, and that's something that you need to address. If you see the same user in different variants, that's usually a problem, right? That should not happen, right? There's many alerts, many guardrails that you can add around it, but in the end, the user has to make a decision. So
the user meaning the owner of the platform or the company, not the user in the experiment, obviously. When we say user, sometimes users like, oh, the person who was exposed to the experiment, the user on the website. I'm making it very clear it's the owner of the platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
On the client side, the person who bought the tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that person or that team or that group or that organization, they need to have a measure of quality for experiments, right? And they should try to improve the quality of experiments over time as well. So that's a measurement that they should have for their experimentation program as well. Are we increasing quality of experiments? Are we decreasing SRM errors? Are we increasing the velocity? Are we so there's now this is outside of quality. There's a bunch of metrics that they want to improve over time in the program, right? And quality is one.
Yeah, so I guess like if I had to summarize your POV, it's basically like we want to give everyone all the tools to ensure that they make the decision as educated as possible on, is this experiment trustworthy? Is this data trustworthy? Is this decision that is about to be made trustworthy? But you are not the one, you as in AB Smartly, you guys aren't the one dictating if this test is trustworthy. You're just giving them the tools for the end user to make that decision.
Exactly.
Fair to say?
Yeah.
I want to push you on that because I think this is a very interesting conversation in the space of testing tools. This is such a small, nitpicky UI thing, but it has a lot of controversial, like it has a lot of conflicting opinions on it. I don't need to know how AB Smartly does this, but I am curious what your POV is on testing tools, highlighting when something is a stat sig winner and highlighting like numbers as green. And I say that to say, not like after 2 weeks with all the trusts and the checks and everything, like a more comprehensive approach to like saying something stat sig. I mean more after 2 hours when there's 50 versus 30 leads in like 1,000 sessions. And technically, if you just look at the p-value, it's statistically significant. I don't know if the numbers math up that way, but just follow me on the math, right? If after 1 hour, it's like, all right, technically p-value equals stat sig, make number green in tool. The reason I'm asking you this because I think it's misleading and I don't like this. I think there are other tools that have removed that and they're like, give it some more time. Technically it's stat sig, but it's not. We haven't reached like one business cycle or like it's been too early. Give it a couple days at least. I appreciate when tools do this, but what's your POV on like other testing tools doing that?
Well, let me tell you about booking first because that changed so many times there.
Like like doing that yes or no, yes and no?
And,
interesting.
Because the people have different ideas around it, right? And you also evolve your idea around it over time. Like in the beginning, when we built it, we just made it green if it was over 90%, right? Actually, we
even if it was like 15 minutes of live test time.
Yes,
okay.
Right. It was green right away. Like so basically, we could configure per experiment what's the threshold that we would use for a confidence, right? I think that we even decreased. In the beginning, we started with 90%. We decreased to 80% because in the beginning we didn't have enough traffic to make a decision in a decent amount of time, right? We didn't want to run one experiment for 2 months to make a decision. So we actually were making decisions at 80% confidence. And we only had the p-value there. So if the p-value was below 0.2, then it would appear in green or something.
For the primary metric that they selected?
Yeah. Exactly. which was we only had one primary metric hard coded it, and it was conversion rates for bookers, so people making bookings. And at some point we added more stuff, like we added confidence intervals as well, and and then the confidence interval could be green. And then at some point we decided, hey, this doesn't look right. Like we show it green even if the experiment is not powered enough.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That the most meta fucking A/B test would be to actually A/B test the display of the test results from the people running experiments with a KPI of velocity. Do you follow me on that?
Yes.
Like
actually,
you actually test on the testers.
It was after my time, but they started testing, but the KPI was quality of experiments and not velocity.
So you guys, so after your time, they actually literally A/B tested on the people running A/B tests.
Yes.
I love that. That's awesome. Man, I want to be in that place. I have every company I've worked for, I've just never had enough resourcing and buy-in to be able to do the highest amount of tests. It's always better than it was before, but I've never even come close to like Microsoft or Booking levels of testing. One, partly because of the traffic of the companies I worked for, but also in part is just like just never had enough resources. Man, to be able to be in a place where I could like run tests on people running tests, that would make me so happy.
Yeah, you had 1,000 people running experiments, right? So that was awesome, right?
That's awesome.
That's the only way that you can get 1,000 experiments running simultaneously in the website, right? You need to have a bunch of people doing it.
Yeah, how do the people running tests feel that they were running tests against themselves? Like, how do they feel that they were being tested on running tests?
They were testers, right? So
they were like, hell yeah.
It was after my time, but if I was still there, I would be fine with running tests on me, right? They are running tests on users too, right?
Yeah, well, you'd have to make sure they were blind in the study to know like they had no visibility of the actual tests that they were.
Yeah, I don't know how they did that. How they did that? Maybe they allowed only the teams working on the tool to be able to see those experiments, to know what they were, right?
That's it, right? Like they can't be involved in the test because that would bias the results. They have to be blind. And in fact, I think it would have to be double blind, right? People analyzing the test would have to not know what part they were exposed. This is so meta. Kind of a hard pivot out from what we were just talking about. I'm going to make you give me the strongest case as you who's built your own testing tool. And as you who are trying to sell other people testing tools, I want you to provide to me the strongest case for me to build my own A/B testing tool internally. What would be the use cases for me to do that versus buy your product?
Oh, you are making it difficult for me. After I left Booking, I started consulting with companies, right, on A/B testing, pretty much doing what I was doing at Booking, but for other companies, like helping them with the tooling part, helping them with setting up the teams in the best way to grow experimentation across the organization. And they were always asking me different questions about how to build a tool internally and if they should buy or build. And I always suggested building in-house because that was my experience at Booking, right? I knew that what existed out there was not good enough for mature companies. And those were the companies that I was consulting to, right? So they were more mature companies. So I always suggested them, hey, you should build your own, right? Because whatever tool you are going to use now, even if it works in the beginning, like in the long run, you'll find the need to build it yourself because you'll need this, and that it will not going to give you. But things change a lot since those times, right? Better tools came to the market. One was ours that we built because with the vision that we had from Booking and other competitors that built similar tooling. So now my idea shifted, right? Now there are the tools that exist are so sophisticated, so advanced that it's really difficult to find use cases that are so different from the rest of the companies that you actually need to build a tool for yourself, right? It's becoming more and more difficult to do that because the tools are so easily extendable that you might want to build on top of the tool, but building from scratch, it's really, really difficult to come up with a reason to do that. Especially with what I mentioned before, that the hidden costs are so big, right? It's if you start thinking about the years of maintenance, you need huge teams to maintain a tool like that, a tool that is sophisticated enough. You cannot do it with one person. You need a team to do it. Then you'll find out all the edge cases, keeping up with the best practices, with new statistical methods. It's a huge effort, right? So what you'll want to do is to buy a tool that works for you and then build on top for stuff that is more fine-tuned to your company, right? But I cannot think on a reason on why you would build one from scratch now.
I'd play the devil's advocate for that and say, well, I guess I'll play 2 points of that. I'm curious how you think about this. Point A is investment from a time and resourcing perspective is a lot. And I'm not saying the quality isn't high with tools like AB Smartly and other tools that are external. But I think there is a, like, if I'm just trying to get A/B testing off the ground, I'm trying to use more proof of concept and get people validating.
For that, like, it doesn't matter much what you do, right? If you just want to kickstart it, right? And increase the velocity and get people used to it. It doesn't matter if you build it yourself or if you use a cheap tool just to do it, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly where I was going with that. And I think in part, the tools that you built, and I think honestly, I think the people you talk to are at the upper echelon where the trust has to be high, because I think the decision, first of all, the capabilities to trust the data are much more advanced. The guardrails and the investment and the culture that are built at these companies are such that trustworthy decisions are at the like upper echelon of focus. Not every company operates that way. And I've worked at companies and I've been part of companies, consulted, talked to people, etc., where it's like they don't even want to run an A/B test because they're like, it's too slow. And it's like they don't give a shit about trust in data. They don't give a shit about data. So there's a foundational piece of like being data driven, and then on top of that, experimentation, that it's like you have to work on these foundational pieces. And if you just come in and say like spend tens of thousands of dollars and set up this testing tool, they're like, no. But if you start somewhere small and gradually build up to it, that can work. That being the case, I'm not saying that's the only way. No,
I agree. I agree. And that's what you have to do in the beginning, right? You need to run experiments, and it doesn't matter with what. You just want people to run experiments, right? And run more over time, because that will start the wheel spinning, right? And at some point you'll find the need for more sophisticated tooling, but in the beginning, it doesn't matter much, right?
Exactly. So I think you and I are aligned on that. That's great. Yeah. And I'd also say like trust is, I know we talked about this before, but trust is such an interesting point of view that I think it's okay if early on in your experimentation program, again, I think there's a level of trust where, actually, I'm curious, for you, is trust binary? Like you either trust the results or you don't?
I don't know. Like, I don't think it's binary. I think that
I'm the same way. I think there's levels where, like, unless you've given me a reason to not trust the results, I will trust them. I guess I'll trust but verify. Like, I will try and poke holes. But if I look at obvious instances where things potentially could break and I see no red flags, then I'll trust it. But I am curious about that, because I think in many ways it is seen in, at least from what I've seen, the Microsofts and the booking people, it's like trust should be at the top level, where it should be like 1,000% trust. You know what I mean? Like it should be at the upper echelon of trust. And it's like, I don't know, if you look at all the data and there's no reason for you to distrust it, then I think that at least as long as you're moving fast enough and you have your eye towards monitoring everything, that's probably good enough in the short term. If you don't have a structure and foundation to trust every single little thing, it's okay to start with a decreased bar of trust. And then as you build the program up, have your eye towards trust and velocity and these other things as well. But it's like, I don't know, it's okay if in the beginning you're like, the data's not perfect, but let's get it moving and let's break it fast and then fix it fast and get better every time we run it. I'm curious how you feel about that.
I think that's trust, like the thresholds of trust increase with the culture as well, right? So in the beginning, you don't know everything that can go wrong. Like, so you basically trust what you see. Then at some point, you start having data scientists validating the results of the tool just to be sure that, hey, I want to be sure that this is correct. So I'll recalculate the data with our data to see if it matches what the tool gives us, right? And they start adding that over time as well. Like now I want to do SRM on top, and now I want to do check if we are losing data somewhere. Like as you start having visibility on what can go wrong, your thresholds change, right?
I agree. And that's where I'm almost like, I don't know. It's like the analogy I use is like hockey or basketball, like sports, where if you're a child, right, lower maturity, you're a child, and they double dribble the basketball. It's like, it's okay. I don't like if I was a referee for like a child's basketball game, if they were traveling, if they were double dribbling, like I could give a fuck. I know they're technically breaking the rules, but that's okay. Let them figure out how to move, navigate the space, shoot the ball, figure all that out. Because you're not going to hold a toddler who's just learning how to play basketball to the levels of LeBron James, right? I would hope you wouldn't, because it's just never going to happen. But as they move up in maturity, as they become 10 instead of they were 5, now they're 10. It's like, yeah, if you double dribble, we're gonna catch you. You're gonna have a turnover, like you broke the rules. We're gonna hold you to those stricter rules. And then, but even when they're 10, they still play on the lower hoop. They're not playing on the NBA size tall hoop. And it's like, give them instances to grow. And then when they're at the NBA, I see like Booking and Microsoft. These are the NBA, right? They got to play at that upper levels of like maturity and trust. They got to do it right. But if you're just breaking into it, like, dude, run the test client side. Call it at 80%. It's not the worst thing in the world if you keep on having your eye towards getting better, building the foundation. If you're set it at 80% and that's your foundation for like 10 years, I would have a lot of questions. But if you're like, I'm just trying to ship some stuff and get this flywheel spinning and we'll get it better, I'm good with that. Are you good with that?
That's it. I think you said it, right? And Lucas even mentioned that, I think it was in a response to a LinkedIn post, that on top of that, you get a compound effect of learning how to run better experiments as well, right? The more experiments you run, you get better at running experiments as well, not only at the results, right, at the results that you get, but you also increase the quality of the experiments that you run, and you increase the velocity of running experiments you get. Yeah, exactly.
I'm very aligned. I wanted to flesh out your POV there because I think I've just read on LinkedIn a lot of people talk about trust, and I'm aligned with you that trust is a big thing, but I didn't think this would be a trust conversation, but I'm actually really glad we had this conversation because I think it does bring an interesting perspective on levels of trust. And early maturity, it's okay if it's not the best quality thing, but don't ignore that. Get better. Every time you run a test, get better. And your tool should be trustworthy. So let's maybe wrap on this last question. What is something I could do today that I could improve trust in my CRO program?
Well, there's so much, Shiva. What's your maturity level?
Let's go low to mid. I don't want to talk about Microsoft or Booking because I think it's just like, that's just the level that I'll talk to 7 people about. But my audience are people who are maybe juniors breaking into it or marketers who don't understand the logistics of experimentation and stuff. So like, what can I do to increase, let's say, trust in data, trust in experimentation from a low to low mid maturity of a program?
Well, in the beginning, you want to increase trust in running single experiments, right? So you want to be sure that you have the right metric for the kind of experiments that you are running, or for maybe if you have different metrics for different products, for different parts of the website where you experiment, you have the right metric for each kind of those experiments that you run, right? So that's super important, that you are not losing data, that all the pipeline works perfectly. After that, you start increasing the quality of writing your hypothesis, or are you making the right prediction? Are you looking at taking ideas from the right source, right? So are we testing the right things there as well? Because in the beginning, it doesn't matter much what you are testing. You just want to test stuff to get people used to it. But after a threshold, then you want to be sure that people are investing their time in things that are good for the business, right? And then after that, you want to be sure that people improve actually over time. And for that, you need to keep up with the program. So you need to look at the knowledge base. If you are writing good hypotheses, if you are making good decisions, like you need to track things more about the program instead of the experiment on the experiment level.
Yeah. Okay, this is great. I super appreciate having you on as a person who did not sales pitch, although I'm going to bleep out the one testing tool name you called out previously. But all things considered, very good at avoiding controversial and shit-talking other vendors. I like tried to type out your name to like make sure I pronounce it properly, and now I don't remember how to say it. Elvis, you're a co-founder at AB Smartly, and thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you wanted to plug?
No, thank you, Shiva. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.